Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Good, yeah, nice, yeah.
Thought we'd start off with the most important question of all.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, kind of relating to the band's title of the name, because with it being the Little Kicks, referencing that Seinfeld episode.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You a big sitcom guy? What's your kind of favourite sitcom you go to?
I do like Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is obviously related to Larry David and Seinfeld and things. That's probably one of my faves. Although I've not seen it in a wee while, and it's coming back, so I'm quite excited about that. The Seinfeld thing's a bit of a ruse because it was the first drummer that gave us the name. So I do know Seinfeld, but I don't know it. Like, people have asked me really in-depth questions about Seinfeld, and I'm like, I don't really know. I just like that episode. I know that one.
Yeah, it's quite a good episode.
But yeah, I do like Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's probably my favourite.
Yeah. Do you watch quite a lot of stuff like kind of in your spare time to wind down, or is music something that's kind of always on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I really like going to the cinema. I don't get as much chance. I used to go a lot when I don't live in the city, so I used to go all the time. I had the kind of pass, so you can just go and see anything and it's free. And I would go to see literally anything. And these days it's more like I would watch, like, I really enjoyed that series Guilt, the BBC show that was like, the soundtrack was amazing. So I do when I can watch shows and things like that. I don't tend to go near your Game of Thrones and stuff because I'm like, I don't have 400 hours to give away. So if I'm going to get invested in something, you know, like True Detective's great, 6 episodes done, doesn't take up your whole life.
Brilliant TV show as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Breaking Bad's probably the only one, and I think the Breaking Bad's the reason that I don't look at other things, because I got properly hooked on Breaking Bad and was watching it like before I went to work, watching it on my lunch break, watching it when I got back from work. And you just sort of get totally sort of hooked on these things. So when I can watch a film, yeah, I do enjoy that to wind down, I think, more than probably because my work and the band is live music. I probably enjoy that more than going to see a band in my spare time, probably.
You still get quite hooked on albums, like what you're saying they were getting hooked on Breaking Bad. You still find yourself kind of getting trapped inside an album, can't stop listening to it. Yeah.
I mean, like, I still buy a lot of records and stuff. I find Spotify, in a way, actually makes me buy more, because every Friday, it's a bit like when I was younger, I would go to 1UP or go to the record shop and buy whatever was out new that week that I thought looked quite interesting, either based on the artwork or based by the reviews that you'd read. Now I feel like it's like you playlist anything that might be remotely interesting. Like, I always look at like the new releases on Friday and the reviews in Pitchfork and various sites, and if there's something that sounds interesting, I'll go and playlist it. And I might not get to it for a couple of weeks, but I'll quite addictively need to go and check it out, and then quite often that'll lead to me buying a couple of records within a fortnight of hearing it. Sometimes because it's something that'll sound really good on record and you think I'd like to listen to that at home, and sometimes actually because I've listened to it so much on Spotify that I'm like, I'm going to buy that because I feel like I should give the band something. Because I'm in a band, I'm probably quite soft to that.
That's something that's probably gotten a bit harder as well since you guys started out. People were probably more into buying music back then than they are now, and harder to shift your stuff these days.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we make our albums on record now, and that's quite a normal thing for us to do. And some of the older folk that come to the gigs will be like, oh, you've got vinyl, geez, sort of thing. And then they're like, people still buy vinyl? And you're like, yeah, it's kind of come back. Whereas the CD thing's just died.
Well, vinyl's much bigger than CD.
Taken over, yeah. And I think what we used to find was people would actually buy, we used to sell a lot of CDs because people would want to give you something. Like, they'd come to the gig, it's never that expensive a ticket, and they would be like, kind of want to buy something, but now everyone wants to buy a band t-shirt.
Yeah, I quite like getting a t-shirt when I'm at a gig.
You know, so it's like, I probably would if it was cool, but some people feel a bit like that's a young person's thing, or I don't know, don't feel comfortable doing it, so they'll be like, I'll buy a CD because it's like giving you a tenner towards the project, but you know, and then they've complained in their car. Or I've seen people say to me at the merch stand, I'm going to buy this and give it to my mate, you know, because I think he'd like it. You know, it's quite an easy way. And what's a tenner? It's like 2 drinks these days. So
that's why I like to measure everything by how much is
exactly.
a pint, and then just work it.
So it's like a £5 a pint now. So 2 pints for. But then I think what's happening now is cars don't have CD players in them. So and your devices you're getting from home are like Alexa, and we've got a sound booth thing that we use for playing Spotify through, and I don't think. We've got a CD player in the house, but it's not like I can't remember last time I put a CD on. So I don't even know if it seems weird to not get them printed going forward. And we set them out at the merch stand, but
I guess it's just something because you've done from the start as well.
Yeah.
It's odd not putting an album
out in physical format.
Did you do vinyl from the start as well, or was it just CDs?
No, the first two records aren't on vinyl. I feel like we could probably do a press of the second one. I think there'd be enough interest in that.
Why do you go for the second one instead of the first?
I think the first one's kind of like a learning curve, and it feels quite old to us now. I think the second one was the point where people actually sort of started to pay a bit more attention, maybe. And I think it's because that is like quite a varied set of songs. Like there's like a ballad on there, there's like an Afrobeat thing, there's like couple of pop songs, there's a sort of like summery pop song. It's like 35 minutes long. It was released, I don't think it was released in the summer, but for some reason we played loads of festivals that summer and the songs just went down really well. Record, yeah. So people that do come and see the show probably appreciate those songs. There's a couple of songs on the first record that we do get asked for, but I think the second one definitely.
I maybe prefer the first one over the
second.
Really? To be honest, yeah.
Oh, right.
I think probably say third record top, fourth,
yeah.
second. No, fourth, first, second.
All right. Well, that's good to know.
I really like the first album. Yeah, it's quite. And it's interesting as well because you can see how it carries on, like in the albums that follow. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the songwriting is kind of simplistic and like a bit simpler in some ways, but it's so relatable. But then as you're songwriting, even on the fourth record, there are parts in it like lyrically where it's so simple in the way that it's so relatable. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's nice of you to say. I think the first one we had quite a long time to make it because your first record's always like that. It's like it's just a collection of the songs at that point, and I think it was recorded between Glasgow and Aberdeen. So the songs that were recorded in Glasgow, it was all fine. It was all good fun. But the songs recorded in Glasgow were of a certain level, and I know that the guy that we used in Aberdeen he didn't struggle, but he said to me it's quite hard to get ththese to fit on one record, both recorded in different spaces. Yeah. And that's why there's a little bit, looking back, of disparity between a couple of tracks, particularly towards the end of the record. I think there's a couple of tracks towards the end that are not recorded as well as the rest of the record. So it's like, part of me often for a while thought it'd be great to go back and redo them with like I think my voice is better now than it was 10 years ago. I think we can play better than we did 10 years ago. But there's also a big argument of like records are a time capsule of something at a certain time.
I think I'd agree with that because it's part of the band's history, if you know what I mean. That's what a record kind of is, just capturing a phase in the band's
I think evolution. To redo it is like George Lucas doing Star Wars or, the 15 different versions of Apocalypse Now. It's like, what's the point? It's like, just leave it as it was. It's a sort of fun indie pop, occasionally scratchy, occasionally really well put together collection of where you were at that point.
Yeah.
And that's that. I think so. I think the second one I'm always fonder towards because there's less things I would change on it.
Yeah, I guess when you have that personal connection to it as well from an artist's point of view, you probably.
But I don't think there'll be a repress of any of them soon. But if money was no object, they'd all be getting repressed and everything. But actually pressed on record. But yeah, I'm really proud of like the song "Don't Give Up So Easily" and the song "Chances We've Had."
Yeah, "Chances We've Had." What's the one that is it? "Small Talk" as well that comes after "Chances"?
Yeah,
I love that song. That's
I think it's a good song. I think that's one that annoyed me because we recorded it and I felt like we slightly lost a little bit of dynamic in it. That's one that I thought was a really good song, and I had a demo of it, and I feel like it's good. And there's just a couple things that it would change, and but those three songs. That's funny that you mentioned that one because that's the three that people do say like, oh, you never play that one.
Do you still play "Chance We've Had" or anything like that?
No. I mean, we played "Don't Give Up So Easily" right up until about 2 years ago, because it's always felt to me like a bit like an indie single that could have done really well. It didn't. Like every time we played it, folk were like, "What's that first song you played? It's really good." And like when you're younger, you're like, "Oh, that's gonna be the song that'll be like on FIFA or something, and that'll get us famous." And I'd go to parties and like people would be playing it, and I'd find that really awkward. But it's also kind of nice that they believed in it that much
and resonate with it. Yeah.
So that one and "Chances We've Had" were always like that thing that indie bands are popular for, which is upbeat. You can have a bit of a bop to it in a field somewhere. That's what I thought those kind of represented. So we did play them for a long time, but we haven't played them in a while. I'm not sure Scott would now be able to, like, it was a different drummer that played those. Scott always tries to get songs to be slower. It'd be quite funny, ask him to play 140 BPM indie banger and think he would be horrified. But we can ask, we can see what he says.
Do you remember what you were kind of thinking going into the recording process for those songs, like the first album? Your feelings looking back on it, like.
Yeah, I mean the band's been around for quite a while, and obviously like that first record was like 2009. So
How long was it after like the band had started? When did you guys form, and then?
oh god, I mean like I had a band when I was coming out of uni or going to uni or something, and it kind of disintegrated, and then re-amalgamated with various people quite a few times. And at some point in the midst of all that, we got asked for a name. We called ourselves the Little Kicks, but it wasn't a serious project. Like the bass player, God bless him, still know him, kicks about. He was like a liability. We'd like practices where I didn't drive. I only recently learned to drive, so I'd have to go on a bus up and get him from his house and take him down. And like he'd have a few things going on, and eventually he just stopped coming, and I stopped getting him. So the project kind of went from being this sort of like, I think we had an EP launch, like the night of the EP launch we did, which was like way back. It was like he didn't even turn up for soundcheck. We're like, I don't know if this is gonna actually happen.
The EP launched that night.
It was like 5:00. We were like, where's Gareth gone? And then he did come, but he was an amazing bass player, but he was always kind of a little bit out of it. And I think he would kind of admit that himself. And I'm not slagging him off because he's amazing. He's a great guy. It got to the point where I was like, look, this doesn't really work for either of us. And I've met him lots since, and he was like, yeah, I totally understand. So we were kind of doing stuff as the Little Kicks, but not really pushing it. And then I think essentially the drummer at the time, because Gareth was being so flaky, went, look, because we were going out to practice and waiting for Gareth, and then the drummer was like, I've actually got stuff to do, so if he's not going to show up, I'm just going to go home. And then me and the guitarist were left kind of like, this doesn't really work. So we actually ended up doing acoustic gigs for quite some time with a heap of songs, some of which had been written at that time for the EP, and a lot of the stuff we were then doing was like ended up on the first album. So it was more of an acoustic project for a very long time. And then going to Exodus and like nights out, we met Lewis and Bob, who joined the band for the first record, and that was like a really exciting time because we were like, I don't know, young guys going out having fun, playing gigs, and it was
that's kind of reflected in the first album as well. You can kind of hear that shining through a bit.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And I think we had this thing where we got like every support slot. There can't have been a lot of bands busy that year because we got like every support slot under the sun. So we played with people like Future Heads and Maximo Park, and it was that kind of couple of years where Aberdeen just got loads of gigs.
You've done like Foals and Editors and stuff as
well.
Yeah,
we did Foals and Mishulu on their first Aberdeen show, and it was like 300 people there, and Editors was like 100 people.
Man,
it was crazy.
But did they Editors in Aberdeen?
Yeah, they played which is now Siberia Hotel. So
that used to be a venue.
Yeah, it was. Downstairs was Lava. Before that, it was called Glow 303. There's a poster for it in Captain Tom's. Actually, you can see it behind the till, and I'm desperate to thieve it because I never got. I have one, but I've no idea where it's gone.
In a box somewhere. Yeah.
But we did a lot of stuff quite quickly. Seemed to be kicking about, and probably 2008 actually, because that's when we did Tea in the Park. So I would say the band really started, like being an actual band that you'd think. We did the Cooks as well and stuff about then, and that kind of felt like we were on the track to be doing something that was not just mucking about in our practice room. So that kind of feeling of optimism probably went into doing the first record and trying to make something that was a representation of our sort of party sort of set to an extent, but it seems like such a long time ago now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, so the band is pretty old.
Is it weird ever listening back to the album then, with it being? When was the last time you heard the first album?
I actually was on a bus. I was coming back from Edinburgh or Glasgow about 6 months ago or a year ago. I don't know why. I think I got new headphones or something, and one of the songs came on shuffle on Spotify, which I thought was really funny, from Boxing Clever. So I whacked it on. I just thought, I've not listened to this in ages. I'll whack it on. And I think I was feeling kind of nostalgic because I have a WhatsApp group with the guys that were in that lineup at the time. And I sent them a message saying like, just listen to our first record. And, it's actually pretty good. Like, I think we don't speak about it much, and it represents that time. And I was kind of being a bit nostalgic. I was probably hungover or I tend to be nostalgic when I travel. I don't know why. So, and they were like, yeah, like they were saying there's a few things they'd changed, but they were quite happy with it. And I was kind of saying the same, but that's about a year ago, and as we were saying, I think you either have to stop unpicking it and just go, that's of that time, and walk away.
Yeah.
Or let it annoy you forever. But it doesn't annoy me forever. I think it was a really nice time to be in Aberdeen and young, and I'm not old, but I was younger, and going out more and living in the city centre, and like the Dirty Hearts Club thing was kicking off probably just after that, and it was like nice to be at the centre of all that and go to gigs. Went and saw the Klaxons and Shit Disco and stuff on a Tuesday night, and Mashulu and Hot Chip I think the week after, and go out till 3 a.m. and then get up and be probably maybe not even a student, but certainly not working with any particular career plan. And then that's kind of what that time represents to me. And it's only 10 years ago, but a lot can happen in sort of 10 years, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird to think the last decade. What's going on? Maybe not for the best in the grand scheme of things, but
yeah, probably not best to dwell on it too much.
How long does it take? You kind of said there how you maybe would just leave it now, but how long does it take for those things to start to niggle? Like, has that happened with all of the last record for you? Or
actually, no. No, like I think the second one. I mean, I feel like my voice is a niggle for me, because I feel like there's days where I wake up and my voice is completely there without any effort, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. I could have been out the night before, and it just seems to have a sweet spot, and it's there. And there's other times you get up and you haven't had a drink, and you haven't been out, and you haven't been talking, and you haven't, you've looked after yourself that week. You've not really, eaten badly, and you've done exercise, and because you've got a session on the Saturday, and you get up and go to do a radio session, and you can't sing, or you can sing, but it's not what you want. It's there, but you can't get to it. And I feel like some of the recordings on the first 2 records would have benefited from. I used to have really bad sinus problems, so that's why people used to say you sound like Coldplay. It's like, we don't sound like Coldplay, but my vocal sounds nasal because it sounds a bit like Chris Martin. And I used to really struggle with that. I used to have to drink so many cups of tea and honey and lemon just before doing vocal takes, because it used to be really bad. And I went to Japan in 2010, I think it was, or 2011, something like that.
Is that when you went with the band?
I went to visit the guy that drummed in the band. He left the band, so the end of our first record, during the making of our first record, our drummer got a job in Japan. So the band was actually kind of going to finish, but we had a few gigs to obligate, and that were going to be fun, and we didn't want to not do them because of Bob leaving. We thought, well, we want to do them, so it's his decision to go. So we got Scott, that's now the drummer, in to fill in, and in the rehearsal time, prepping for those gigs, we mucked about with a couple of new ideas that were immediately really interesting. We're like, oh, maybe there is actually legs in just... We hadn't said we were stopping, but at the back of our mind, it was like, this is probably going to be the last few gigs and we'll do something else. And then we wrote a couple of new songs, and that became the guts of the second record, and we just carried on. But around that time, I went away for 3 weeks, and just before I went to Japan, I was really struggling with my vocals and really with my sinuses, and the doctors were like, yeah, you've actually got a polyp blockage thing. So basically, if it doesn't shrink, we'll remove it. But that's you can take a spray and you can take medication and that, but unless you remove it, it's going to keep annoying you. And they were like, try this medication, it's different, you've not had it before, and go on your holiday, and when you come back, if it's still annoying you, we'll do it. But they have to I think they have to break your nose and go in there. It's horrible. We won't speak about it. But I basically came back from Japan, and for some reason it had gone. So I was away for 3 weeks.
At least you didn't have to get the
nose I never wanted it. But I came back, and it was like, oh, I can actually this isn't a problem anymore. I can actually breathe. I don't know what it was. And I had allergies and stuff, but they seem to have gone. And then in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I've kind of started looking after my voice a lot better. So the thing for me that's probably a niggle is my voice. I think I look back on a couple of recordings and think, God, I could really sing that better, or the knowledge that you have now. But never really about the recording elements, because you're working with the kit that you've got at the time, or the person you've got at that time. So, it's not really you really want to unpick that, and you make those decisions at the time based on your knowledge and experience at that time. So to go back and be like, oh, let's destroy this song and pull it apart and put it back together would just be exhausting, I think. You'd go insane, like Brian Wilson or something.
Well, you just released, or not released recently, but it was a few years back, the Smile Sessions came out with that whole...
Yeah.
It's really interesting to listen to though. Actually.
Yeah, it's amazing. Is that the one that's
the one that they tried to make and they just
he couldn't? I think that was when he had his breakdown.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then it ended up becoming. Is it Smiley Smiley? You know, the record with the green cover. It's got like good vibrations and
yeah,
stuff on it.
yeah. I can't imagine being in Brian Wilson's position where you make pet sounds and people are telling you that it's not good enough or that it's not. That or even
they didn't like it like
yeah.
flat out, did they? They just
no, it's crazy. You listen, I mean, okay, I get it. There's not really. There's 3 singles or something. Like there's. I get where they would come from, but
I mean, if you look at the songwriting on that,
it's insane. It's
some of the best songwriting of all time. Like
I know,
God Only Knows and stuff like that. And
I don't know. It's like it's not something that you want to really think about when you're like writing your own music. You're like, I'm not going to make an album like Pet Sounds. It's like listening to David Bowie and then going to the studio is probably pretty counterproductive because you're like, yeah, he was pretty good.
Do you think you know it's a good album though? Because I think it's Tom York. I've watched interviews before saying stuff that he knows that like Pyramid Song is a good song. Like there are certain radio things that even if people don't like them, he still knows it's good and he feels okay about it. You know, he's happy with it. And
yeah, I think I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's because Radiohead, I love Radiohead, and there's songs I think, why is that on an album? What the hell is this?
Yeah.
And there's other songs I'm like, that is, as soon as I've seen footage of him in the studio getting really excited about an idea, and it's like, and he'll come away from the mic and be like, this sounds amazing, and like, I think when you feel that yourself, you've got to think, which does happen when you're writing stuff. You need to you probably hopefully carry that belief through and think someone else will hopefully feel this way about this too. I think you can over labor it, so you can work on it for too long, and then you forget what you were trying to do at the start.
The original kind of nugget of the idea
was. Sometimes you're too close to it, so you're like, I don't think this is a particularly great song, and then someone else comes in and goes, no, that's your best song. So that's kind of where having a band comes in, because you can send something over and they'll go, this is really good, doesn't need any work, like, or to help you make decisions on it. I find that really helpful because I could go around in circles forever.
Especially when like the recording process is so contained as well.
Yeah.
Especially for, was it your 4th album as well? You went up to the
cabin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think and that's quite an intense environment to do it in. But then there's a lot of pre-production before then, so you're kind of like, we're very lucky in that we've got enough knowledge between us, mainly through the other guys, to be honest, and that we can record pretty much everything before we go up and listen back to it and then go, that bit's rushing a bit, or that bit's... Sometimes I think it's over-analytical and it'd be nice just to play, but then other times it does reveal... It's a time saver on other occasions where it's like, this song's done, let's move on. Do you know what I mean?
Time in the studio is so expensive as well, especially when you're doing it all yourself and self-managed.
You want to limit that happening in the studio. It's like a luxury that we are lucky to have, that when we are in the studio, you're not sitting analysing performances back for too long.
It's you just try to do it and get the take that feels right.
Exactly, yeah. And I think there's quite a famous graph, and it starts off and it goes up, and it's like take 3 is like your perfect take, and then anything after that is sort of tails off again, or take 3 and forward or something. And it's always true. It's like your first one, you'll make a mistake. Your second one, you'll probably make a different mistake, or you'll still be getting your head around it. Third one, you'll nail it, but you won't feel comfortable because it's the first time you've nailed it, but that'll probably be the best take. Sometimes, not always. Yeah, I think it's knowing all that stuff and remembering it when you're working on it probably helps.
You've never like gotten crazy in the studio and gone for a wild number of takes, or what's the most you've kind of hit?
I couldn't get a bit. There was a bit on the 3rd album where I had to do a disco pick, and it was just ding for like 5 minutes, and I couldn't do it. I got about a minute in and I was just like, just couldn't do it. My muscle memory wasn't up to it, and I tried it for about 20 minutes. I was sweating and like screaming at my guitar, and Craig just leant through and was like, we'll just loop it, it's fine. So it's like, so after, at the point where I lost it, he just loops it. I don't have the problem of playing it live. Andrew plays it live, and I've noticed when he's playing it, he does look like he's concentrating like hell. So in my defense, I don't think it's that easy a bit to do. I think those are the parts that are really annoying. There's the really repetitive ones, that like you think, oh, that's really, really easy. It's like, yeah, but try playing it for 6 minutes. So you watch LCD Sound System, there's a guy just playing a cowbell at the back, or a bell part or something, and people are like, God, that guy's got an easy job. But it's like, actually, that's quite difficult to not break concentration in that way.
Because it must just start to get so like you're so self-contained in that moment,
Yeah.
hitting that thing, to still have the perspective to know that you're like, it must be so easy just to slip at a time. Like
Yeah, I think it probably
a bit.
playing music's like, for me, it's like you don't think about it. It needs to be that you're not thinking about what you're doing. It's like running. If you're running and you're not thinking about moving one leg in front of the other, you know what I mean? When you're playing and your hands are moving, whether it's guitar or keyboard, and you're singing, your muscle memory, I guess, is just acting on instinct and it's doing it. It's the minute that you start thinking, oh, is that the right chord? Oh, damn, I made a you know, if you start
Then you
thinking
made a
about
mistake,
it.
yeah.
So that's where your practice comes in. I think, you know, you don't go running and think, oh, did I just put the wrong leg in front of the other one, or think about it too much. And like that's like the best. Like, I do a little bit of running to sort of keep fit and stuff. And I think the best ones I've had are where I've been out for 20 minutes and I've not thought about my legs moving in 15 minutes. You know, because you're like just in a zone kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's the same with music. It's like if you start to think about what you're actually doing at the time of doing it, it'll probably fall apart because you'll start to question it. Oh, I don't know if this is right, and then it's like catches you out. But yeah, I don't think I've been too bad. The guys might disagree. I've always done enough takes, as many as it needs to get done right. That's probably a really political answer.
But no, right answer though.
Yeah, hopefully.
So when you went up to that cottage that we kind of mentioned briefly earlier, did you have all the songs then? Were they all ready before you went into the fourth album?
Yeah, so we were up there for I think it was 10 days. I think we left on the Thursday night or something, and we were there Friday to the following Sunday. So 5, 6, 7, 8 days or something, or 9 days. And everything was, the idea was we would be like set up on the Friday and then hit a song a day.
So did you go in and have that first day? So did you convert it like into a studio? Did you have to?
Yeah, so we drove up on like whatever night it was after work, or that might be rubbish. I can't remember. We left stupidly early on the day that we got access or something. One of the two. But the first day was literally just get in, move things around, and there was basically a 2 bedrooms upstairs, 2 bedrooms downstairs, living area with a kitchen, and a bathroom on each floor. We basically converted the downstairs bedroom to a control room and ran all the cables through. And the upstairs had a landing before you got to the 2 bedrooms, so it was like a sort of like lochside cottage. So it was all heavy wood, so lots of really thick furnishings and tartan thick carpet, you know, like country house kind of vibe. And so it was really dead sounding, and I have to say it was like, I was pretty worried that it wasn't going to work, but we'd all been in one for Hogmanay a few years before and Rockness and stuff. We'd all at different times been to one of these places, and we were all like, yeah, they are pretty cozy little cabin places, and the sound is quite dead, and we were quite confident it would work, but we were also a little bit like, we could get there and it could sound awful. But Scott really takes the credit for that, because he did a lot of research and he took things to deaden his kit in case it wouldn't work and things like that. But it ended up being his drum kit was set on the... Sorry?
We're prepared, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like I was kind of like working on the music side. It tends to be that I'll probably end up focusing on the music logistics of the songs, and the other guys will be looking at the logistics of hotels or studio time or whatever. That's always kind of seems to be how it works. But on this occasion it was like 9 days back to back, and I think the drum kit was on the landing, and that was like it had like a triangle shape above it, you know, like a sort of like, not the eaves, but the peak of the house was there, so it was quite a good sound chamber for the drums and bass. And then there was like amps in the upstairs bedroom, just like in between beds kind of thing. And then Craig would be in the control room, our producer, in the control room, but we converted downstairs next to the kitchen, and everything would just flow through the house. It was just cables flowing through the house, and if you were making anything in the kitchen, you had to go and check if anyone was recording or not. So it was, because it was really small, it was like, you know, it was quite a small environment, but it was amazing because it started off as like a 10 till 6 day. So the first day was like set up a place, get a drum sound, you know, basically do some stuff. But the next lodge was like 150 yards away, so you couldn't really go mental with drums at night. So it started off as like, main thing is get drums and bass done during the day, anything noisy during the day, certainly by 7 o'clock, kind of kill it, because the people that we rented from knew what we were doing. So
they knew you were going into...
Yeah, and we asked them, but still they were like, well, you're fine, we've put you in a lodge that suits that, you're not right in the middle of the heart of the place, but there is people in the other ones on certain days. So we were really lucky because the people that went in, there was nobody there the first weekend. So, but when there was people there, they were a family with 2 boys, if I remember correctly, who were like in Art Monkeys and stuff. So they came over and saw all the gear, and like we gave them a play on the guitars, and they were immediately like, make as much noise as you want. Do you know what I mean? So that was really nice. And me being a worrier, I was concerned about, we go all the way up here, take 10 days off work, and we get shut down after a day and a half or something, you know. So, but it ended up being grand and really good. And what naturally happened was you put 5 guys in a pretty small environment with heaps of music gear, some alcohol and coffee and food and stuff, as you just sort of start to gravitate towards the night time.
Yeah.
So it was like 10 to 6, then it was 12 till, well, it was never till 6. It was like starting at 10 till midnight, and then people would wind down and have a couple of beers, and then it became like we were recording through the night, things like that.
Do you find you write better at night as well, like when you're back?
Yeah, probably. I think, I mean, it's weird because there wasn't much for the lodge thing. There was no Wi-Fi. So it wasn't like you had the distraction of like someone phoning you during the daytime, or you need to check your work email, or you check in with home or anything, because you couldn't. But but at home, I would definitely say there's no distraction, because you don't feel like you need to be anywhere else, or no one's phoning you, or it's not pinging off in the corner. I think nighttime's always been quite a good time for me.
I think your mind operates differently at night as well. There's something about it, like when you're in that.
Yeah, if you've had a good day and you've switched off, you can concentrate on it solely.
Yeah, there's nothing else in your mind.
Yeah, I feel like if you schedule it and it doesn't work, I feel like I'm going to write 7 till 9 tonight, then I'm going to go and, do an errand. It doesn't work like that. I don't think it's like a tap that you can turn on. I think it's like I know Nick Cave does like a 9 to 5 at his typewriter all day.
Really?
Apparently, yeah, which is amazing. But I guess if you're writing words, that way, that would make sense, because you're sitting down and you're processing something. But for me, it's like I kind of sit at an instrument and play, and then the words kind of come out, and they're usually first drafts either quite poor, and I go back and fix them and make them better. Or sometimes the first draft comes out, it's really good, and that ends up being it, and it's done, and you don't know where it came from. And then 6 months later, you're like, oh, that must be about that. That's where that's.
What sort of songs have been like the first draft ones? Are there any you can kind of recall?
I don't remember ever really working that hard on the lyrics for Don't Give Up So Easily or something like that. It was just like, and then sometimes you don't really know what it's about, and you have to really think about it. I think like Chances We've Had, a lot of stuff off the first record was like that. It was like probably being younger, not overanalyzing it, and just being like, this sounds pretty good, great, let's go out, and like just putting it down. Lately, there's been a couple of tracks on the new record that we just finished that have been like quite like I've come out with stuff that's quite personal. I thought I might ramp that back a bit, might try and make that. Yeah, probably just less.
It's difficult though, isn't it? Putting yourself out there for everyone to see. Yeah. Because you're quite, maybe not the right word, but vulnerable. Like you're quite on display when you put yourself into an album like that, and people listen to it and they consume it. Especially with some of the songs on, I think it's the last album. There's some stuff on there that feels quite.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, I think at the end of the day, you're trying to connect with people. So I think the times I've been conflicted, I've erred on the side of, no, I'm just going to leave it as is, because if someone else connects with that, then that can only mean that they might get something from it, and that's what you want. It's like, there's a lot of bands who have songs, or people get in touch with them saying that song means this to me. You're only going to get that if you put something into it. And if you make it about nothing, then it's kind of like less interesting, I think, for you and to sing and for the person to listen to. So I'm kind of conflicted by that sometimes. I mean, like, there's a song on the last record that's very explicitly about Steve Bruce, who was our sound engineer that passed away. And I wrote that kind of based on 2 things. Someone that I know was having a relationship problems, and they came around and talked to me about it. And after they left, I just sat at the piano, and the first verse, I wish I could say the right thing, just came out straight away. The first line came out straight away, and it's nothing to do with Steve. But then the rest of the song became about him, and I was like, I don't really know what to do with this. It's maybe a bit too on the nose, and B, is it something I want to sing about?
Yeah.
And I don't usually do this, but I sent it to Suzanne, saying, I think I was on a night out. I'm usually on a night out when I get the guts to send something to someone. And she was like, oh, it's a really nice song. You need to do something with it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll send it to the guys. And then I think we all felt quite upset about what had happened. So I think the fact I'd put it into a song that we could use, and it represented our feelings on that person who'd done a lot for the band, it would be weird for us not to give him a nod on that next record. So it kind of did that job, but we felt well. And then it was probably the most heated song in the studio because of it, I think, because everyone was quite emotional about it.
It must be difficult to record that as well. That was probably the one with the most pressure on it.
I definitely put it off. I think I knew the vocal was coming for it for quite a few days, and we just bump it back. And then I think I wasn't that disappointed that the day I did it, the guys weren't going to be going to watch. There was a pub not far away, and they didn't use it a lot, but a couple of times Man United were playing or Aberdeen were playing or whatever. Guys would go and watch the football. And I think
teams you mentioned there.
Yeah, well, I don't support Man United, but I don't particularly know anything about football. So I do support Aberdeen, but in England, I claim to support Liverpool because I was bought a Liverpool kit when I was a kid. But this is a bone of contention in the band, so it's best not to dwell on that, to be honest. But I now support them a lot because they win things now. But I'm joking. But yeah, they would go away, and I wasn't that upset they weren't going to be there when I was doing that. I was like, that will give me a bit of space. But then they came back 4 pints deep, and we're like, oh, you can get a bit more, give this and give it a bit more of that. And I found that quite uncomfortable. But that's where Craig sort of stepped in and said, look, and it was really funny because I don't think he knew I could hear, because we had a talkback system going, but sometimes it would just be silence and you're standing upstairs. So the vocals were done upstairs and everyone else is in the booth. Not the booth.
So you're completely isolated.
Yeah, so you're upstairs and they're all in the control room downstairs to not make any noise, because obviously with vocals the mic picks up everything. If you're doing guitars and that, the guys would be sitting playing FIFA on mute in the lounge area, and it was quite good because they'd be listening but also playing, and then they would sort of sing up and go, sounds really good, and then go back to their game. But with vocals it was like, you all need to come in here, because if somebody's making a cup of tea you're going to hear it.
Yeah. So
they were kind of sitting in the room having a conversation about the vocal performance, saying like, oh, it could be a bit more emotional and stuff, or I think everyone just wanted that song to be right.
That's a tough note to take though, like just saying it could be a bit more, like how do you get yourself into that place where it can be a bit more emotional and you can kind of get
I think on that occasion what had happened was the song had changed a bit, so it had been quite a soft thing on demo and in the practice room, and it stepped up a little notch to have drums on it and other bits from the guys. And then on the day of recording the vocals, Craig was trying to get me to do it more gently rather than me. We have a phrase called give it biscuits, which is like give it a bit of oomph. And he was like, can you just make it a bit softer? And then at the end, when you need to open up for the last minute, just open up a bit. But it's not even necessarily about being emotional about it. I think, I don't know. And that is something I struggled with for the first, I would say. And this is not a disrespect to Craig, because we didn't work with Craig on the new record we've just finished, but the record we just did, Paul, that we were working with, was really good at getting me to be a bit more passionate in the vocal booth at the expense of tuning. Like, not just thinking of, I've got to sing this sheet, looking at the sheet going, I have to sing this perfect, and it has to be right. He was more like, I like the vocal, it sounds good, maybe give it a little bit more of this, or you're really like getting annoyed about this situation, or this has really hacked you off, and getting into that mindset of like the vocal's a performance that's going to draw you in. And I think performing a bit more, because in the past they probably have been guilty of just trying to do what is in tune and what's correct,
the notes spot on,
which if you ever isolate vocals, you see these classic album shows and they isolate vocals, they're not always in tune, they're not always that technically great, but they've got personality, or they've got a snarl to them or something. Yeah. And I think we haven't had that in previous records. I think the last record's the best I've, to that point, that I'd sung on recordings, because my voice was in its best shape. So there's moments of that I thought it was great and doesn't need to be changed. But I think a couple of the new songs we've been working on, it needed a bit more personality, and it is quite, I do really struggle. Like, there was a song where he was like, you need to be like properly like angry on this one, and I was like, it's just not really my nature to be like that, but we got there. I listen back to them now and I'm like, oh, you can actually hear there's a delivery there. So that's maybe something that would come from getting a bit of coaching or a bit of training on that, but I never really had lessons or anything like that, so I do struggle with that a wee bit, I would say.
Were you self-taught to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, like I did like keyboard lessons, piano lessons at school, and then I got to the point where I was like grade 4 or 5 on the keyboard, and my mum and dad were paying money for lessons, and I kind of was at the point where I was really into like the Doors and the Beatles and stuff when I was like 17, 16, or maybe younger than that actually, and I could play. I got a book and it was like all of the Doors songs and all of the Beatles songs, and I could just pick that up and play it. And I kind of said to them, I was like, you know, I don't think I'm going to go into music teaching or anything, and this is costing me like X amount of money. You know, I was kind of getting to that age where I was aware that my brother and sister were requiring things as well. You know, like my sister's a dancer, so she would have had dance lessons, and my brother was keen on football and various other things.
Were you the youngest, or?
I'm the oldest.
Oh, you're the oldest.
But I think I kind of was like, look, you don't need to spend 15 quid a week on my stuff.
Do it yourself. Yeah.
You know, I can kind of do it myself. I'm now writing little bits of stuff myself, so you don't really need to put me to that anymore if you want. And they were like, well, it's not based on money, but it's your decision, and if you don't want to go back, that's fine. So I think I was gearing up for grade 6, and I kind of just started mucking about with things at home, and then I got a bit of music lessons for guitar. Oh, excuse me, seat. I got a bit of music lessons for guitar at school, for music class. You know, I have to pick up like a second instrument or whatever, but I mainly learned through tab books. It's like OK Computer and the Bends, and Oasis book's the best because it's not got all the chords in it, but their songs are so straightforward and you know them, that you open the book and you're like, yep, E, A, D, G, C sharp minor, great. Then you can kind of play a lot of stuff yourself. So I think my guitar playing's pretty rudimentary, to be honest. Like, I'm not great at I couldn't solo to save my life. If you said solo, I'd be absolutely like lost. But I think I'm quite a good rhythm guitar player, and I utilize a capo a lot to make things more interesting. But I think I'd probably when I do come up with guitar parts, I find they probably don't make much sense to a guitar player because they're not thinking about the easiest way to play it. And that can sometimes be a good thing. Like Andrew in the band doesn't consider himself to be a good guitarist when he's really good because he's not had lessons. So he'll be playing parts and he's probably making it quite hard for himself because he doesn't know the technical, you know, way of doing it easier. Yeah. But the parts he comes up with are a lot more interesting because he doesn't know the rules, you know. And I think if you know the rules, you'll stick to them.
Possibly something you just have in you as well.
Yeah.
Same with that you were saying there, how you just managed to kind of... Do you definitely think it was something that was maybe a bit innate, like, that you had from the beginning? Like, you were always musically inclined and kind of talented in that way? Or something, did you feel you had to kind of work quite hard to kind of...
I think...
come into it?
Yeah, I'm lucky that my parents encouraged it. Like, when I was very little, there's that organ over there, actually. We used to sit in my front room, or my granny's front room, and I was apparently fascinated by it, and used to always sit on it.
And you've still got it?
I've got it now, yeah.
It's quite good. So we're sitting in Stephen's, it's kind of like your music space.
Yeah, it's a little music space, yeah.
And it's quite a nice looking Yamaha.
It's like a 70s pub organ. So my granny and granddad used to run a pub, and I believe it was in the pub. And then my grandma, who's still here, but it said it was mine when the time comes kind of thing. I think she needed some space. So, and well, the problem was I didn't have the space. So now I have the space. It's in here, but I've acquired it, I would say. And my son was actually playing with it yesterday, which was quite nice that he's now sitting playing it and I used to play it. But apparently I was fascinated by it when I was a kid, probably because of the multicoloured buttons on it and the foot pedals. And like, if you're a kid, it's quite an interesting piece of kit. Because it's got buttons on it and it makes a noise. You know, why would you not be interested in that? So apparently they spotted that and were like encouraging it. And then I got keyboard lessons when I was a bit older. But there's not like a particularly musical person in my family, I don't think. I think it's just something I apparently was fascinated by. And I know that when I was a teenager, I used to be pretty obsessed with music. I always had God forbid, my tape, my Walkman or whatever you call it. Yeah. I always had headphones in and I always had music. It was like, to the point they were like, you need to like, I remember I had a problem sleeping when I was a teenager, for not even a teenager, like a 12-year-old or something. And the doctor said to my mum, you could try music. And they were like, no, we think music might be part of the problem. Like, you just
couldn't...
Just upset, just listen to music all the time.
You just couldn't sleep?
Yeah, it was just a weird thing for they just went and said I was having trouble sleeping, quite anxious. I was quite an anxious kid, I think, for a bit. And they said, well, maybe you could try listening to music before bed. And they were like, no, he's always listening to music. I think that might be part of the problem. And it kind of sorted itself. Probably just a growing pain thing. But I'm very lucky that they were quite encouraging with that, I would say.
It's interesting that your son's getting into it as well now. Like, even at such a young age, you can kind of see he's fascinated by it as well.
Yeah, and I know that people probably, I mean, I'm quite bad for just posting photos of him on various instruments because obviously it makes me happy. But he's not forced to do it. Like, when he gets a bit older, if he doesn't care about music, that's fine. If he's into football or whatever, we'll just sell him and get another child. But he genuinely seems to be like, it's a really nice thing for me because we have jams and stuff, and I come back from work and he's got a little guitar and he's got a little keyboard and we play, and he's started to actually sing bits and bobs back to me, which is really cute. And he loves watching Little Kick stuff, which is obviously great because it's like so cute. But it would also be nice if he found some other bands at some point. But
is there anything you've tried to play him?
Well, he's watched our key session because it was on our box. You can record the telly, and he watched that every day.
So did that go out live on TV?
It was on BBC Two, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise that because I've watched it on YouTube, but I didn't realise it was.
Oh yeah, well the whole thing was on BBC Two, and I taped it because I say taped it like a really old fossil, but I recorded it because I was out that night. It was on, and then it got repeated on Alba. So basically, it was kicking about, and we put it on for him just to see his reaction, not because I want to watch my own band. And mine was like blown, and since then he's just wanted to watch it all the time, and he like does the moves, and he really likes a couple of songs. So he'll like now sing. He sings the start of You and Someone Like Me to me, and he'll sing. He's just discovered Girl, and he's fascinated by that because his Auntie Jo, my sister's the dancer in the video, one of the dancers in the video. So he's fascinated by that, and he does like the moves and stuff. It's hilarious. I won't expose you to that when we go in after, but I'm sure you'll meet him. But he it's a really nice thing to have. Hopefully he'll be into it. Because you can have free reign of the instruments I have. It's fine, they're basically his now. He's just currently destroying my Pride of Joy acoustic guitar. I come in from work and it's like, I told him it was a magic guitar and it would only come out, it was backfired. We said it's a magic guitar, it only comes out at certain times. But this of course only makes him more interested in the guitar. So that I come in and I can see the latches in the case are up, and he's tried to go into it, but there's one at the back he's not found, and I'm like, thank God. But he's clever because I've come back a week later and the whole thing's out, and it's like, oh my God. So there's certain things I don't let him touch. But yeah, it's quite nice that he's into it, and it'll be encouraged but not forced, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, kind of the same way that you were though, where your parents kind of encouraged you, but didn't.
Yeah. It wasn't
force
like
it anyway.
Wasn't like they were like, you need to do this, or it was really good. And I think I probably would have. I mean, I was encouraged to play football as well. I did play football, but I think it became quite an easy choice for me because it was like, I was playing football until about, actually my dad was really into football. He was a football manager for an amateur team, and our highlight of our childhood was going to the weekend and watching the game that he managed and playing football side of the pitch and everything. And in Bankery, when we used to live in Bankery when we were kids. And I played football, and I was pretty good at primary school level, and I was like, I mean, everyone listening to this from primary school would be like, no, he wasn't. But I was, I felt like I could have wanted to play for the secondary team, and I didn't get into the secondary team. That kind of just ended my football, because it was at that age where it was like, oh well, I need to do something else, and I'd been doing music stuff at home, and it was like, well, and my brother kept the football going, and it was like, well, he's doing the football, I'll do the music. My brother bought a guitar. He didn't buy a guitar, he got given a guitar, and he never looked at it, so I just nicked it and used it, and so these things naturally ended up being that I kind of acquired this equipment and was like, you spend a lot of time in your room as a teenager just mucking about, and I mean, I had computer games and stuff, and I had some records and stuff, and I bought the NME and things, but it was really music that just sort of got lost in music a lot, and that kind of led to wanting to do all these things, I think.
Did you not get an album review of the NME as well? Yeah,
the second album, which is
that's pretty mental.
Pretty mental, yeah. Didn't know it was going to happen. I'm not religious, and I'm not anti-religious, but I'm not that religious, but I do believe in a bit of luck and a bit of karma and things. And I think sometimes things happen and you're like little reminders to keep going, to keep chipping away. And I think that was one of those. It was like the last CD that we hadn't, so we were sending them all out ourselves, and like Hamish McBeath was the last on my list, and I didn't have enough stamps to do the last one. So I was like, I'll do it another day, and then so I sent it at a different time to the rest, and it's the only one that seemed to make it through. And I don't know, that probably has nothing to do with it, but in my mind, you need a bit of luck.
Oh,
And
look, it's a
perhaps
massive
he
part of
needed a
life,
review
yeah.
for that day. Was one short. I quite like, or genuinely quite like this. I'll put it in. But in my mind, it was like, and it happened with Six Music as well. We sent one to Namone, and it was like sent separately from the rest of the batch, and it got used, and she played 2 tracks, and you're like, well, occasionally these things do get through. But yeah, I didn't know about the NME thing. I was at Lemon Tree, not long started, I think, and someone texted me saying, "Oh, well done on the NME thing," and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I ran over to Morrison's and bought and picked up the NME and was reading it in the shop. I think I even got told off for reading it. I think are you going to pay for that? I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to buy 5 copies." I bought it and come back, and it was pretty exciting at the time. Unfortunately, it was like, it wasn't like, oh my god, this is the greatest record in the history of mankind that you dream for. But it was a pretty solid, like,
It was a decent review, wasn't
yeah,
it?
it was fine. I think it could have been, if they'd destroyed it, then you would have been like, we've got a real problem here. We've just been destroyed in the enemy. And at that point, it meant such a lot that, and especially to yourself as a young person, you'd be like, the world is over, But thankfully, they didn't destroy it. So
Yeah. Have you still got the copies from it?
I probably do. Yeah, I think I've actually got one in here somewhere. I think I kept one in my desk at work for like 6 years, and then eventually took it home.
Is there a lot of stuff like that you've kind of got kicking marble? But you can see there's some posters in here as well from
Yeah,
the
so,
Lemon
like,
Tree gigs.
I was saying to you before that the walls in here are pretty white, and they were driving me nuts because I just found it like I was in an office when I was trying to write. And you used to have posters for the gigs at Lemon Tree that are like bus stop size, and they were just, when I moved house, they were in a poster roll. I've never really had the need to put them up. Like, why would I put a poster of myself on my house? It'd be like the bit in Partridge where they visit and the guy's, spare room. So I covered half of the wall in these things here just to fill the wall space, and then covered the rest in sort of random posters and stuff. So I do keep things, and sometimes I chuck things out over time. I'm like, oh, that's just not needed anymore. But like everyone that's come in is like, oh, that's cool that you've kept that. But I mean, I wouldn't put it up on the wall of my house. I would hide it out here, kind of thing, I think.
It's still nice to have that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I threw out a box of old CDs and stuff because it was like half-finished demos and stuff that were like embarrassingly bad from like teenage days.
It's still good to keep that kind of thing though.
Well, my mate was horrified. He said, "Why have you thrown that out?" And I was like, "No, mate." I was like, "You didn't hear it." I was like, "Do you keep anything from gigs and things? Are you quite sentimental?"
Yeah, I think I'm a wee bit. I've got a box actually, or some of it's my wall now as well. But it's got like all my like AAA passes and photo passes and all that kind of thing, and
yeah,
like backstage wristbands and all that jazz.
I do keep, like, if I've worked a show, like, because I buy records and I have something physical to put it in. If I've worked a show with a band and I buy the record, I'll put my AAA pass because I work in music. So it's like Mercury Rev, Deserted Song is one of my favourite albums of all time. They came and played Lemon Tree. I've never managed to get Deserted Songs on vinyl without looking at it and having to pay a shitload of money for it. And they were selling it for 15 quid at the merch stand at Soundcheck. I'm like, can I buy a record now before the doors open? Because I'm desperate to get this album. And I got it signed. And at the end of the night, I was working the show. End of the night, I got a set list. I did feel a bit fanboyish, but I wasn't bothering them. It was just weird. I was like hanging out with them, chatting about Aberdeen a little bit, and at the end of the show, I was like, oh, can I maybe keep a set list? So I've kind of tucked that inside the records, and I kind of figure, being a sentimental old man, later on I'll go to play the record and be like, oh, look, and if Cohen's into it or whatever, and be like, oh, I actually met these guys, and look, I've got the set list. It's quite a cool little thing to have. So yeah, I probably am really sentimental. Yeah, I probably do keep a lot of stuff.
You mentioned the key session earlier that your son's obsessed with.
Oh yeah.
That was the same year as Tuts. Was that before or after you did the Tuts headline for Summer Night?
We did the key session in like April 2 years ago, I think. After the album was out. It's 2018, probably. And then Tuts was the summer of 2018. So, is that right? Don't know.
So Tuts was Tuts just last year?
No, in fact, April 2017, after the record came out, we did it on the key session, I think.
I think, yeah, and then Tuts was 2018.
Tuts was last summer, yeah, sorry. So last summer we did Belladrum and Tuts, and that was it. That was us kind of finishing off our gigs for the foreseeable future. Yeah. The year before would have been the key session thing. So that, I think because I watch it so much in my own house, it doesn't feel like that long ago, but it is 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. We have spoke a lot about the kind of stuff surrounding the music, but there's a few music things I do want to get into kind of more directly about it. Heartbreak is the first one that I've got to ask about.
Okay.
Did you have that idea for a while that you wanted to make something like that has that kind of three parts to it, and is that kind of wider, bigger thing constructed from individual pieces, or?
Yeah, I mean, that album was kind of started by, I needed to write I was working on some songs and I went into demo Girl. No, in fact, sorry, I went into demo Better Things. I had Better Things in my head, like start to finish. I could hear the riff, I could hear the melodies, and I could hear the feel of it. And I went into our band room to demo Better Things, and on the way out of demoing Better Things was mucking about with a couple of synths and wrote an instrumental of Girl really quickly. So I had these two songs that was like, that sounds like the start of a record. That's this started. And I thought they were both singles. So I was like, well, that's me got two singles. So what else do I need? And I kind of wrote this, this sort of like, I was listening to this Donna Summer record that's called Four Seasons of Love. It's really cheesy disco record. I was really obsessed with disco for a while. And it's like, the songs are like Spring Affair, Summer Feeling, Autumn Melody or something. It's a really cool record, but there's 4 songs. They're all really long, and it's about the seasons and stuff. But it's a concept record, basically, and I was like, that's such a cool record. And like, obviously there's a Donna Summer nod on the synth line on Heartbreak. But I'd written the crux of the song without it being a disco song on piano and the Nord piano, and thought it sounded quite cool. And then it sort of just became this monster because it had like certainly had like 4 or 5 verses, and I liked all of them and didn't know which one to cut. And I felt like every time we make a record, it's like, this is our last record. Like, there's something's either happened personally or with a member of the band, or we've just felt like it's going to be the last one. And I think that happened with the first one, Drummer Movement to Japan. Second one was just a follow-up, but that's probably, the second one's probably the only one that wasn't like that. And then the third one, our bass player Lewis was moving to France, and we didn't know what we were going to do without him.
You've had a lot of band members
shift away. Maybe I'm not very nice, but halfway through that, it felt like, and in fact, Toby left halfway through the third one because it wasn't really working with him being in Edinburgh. So
halfway through the making of it.
Yeah, it just wasn't really working with us being in Aberdeen and him being in Edinburgh. And we were recording in Edinburgh, but we were always a couple of practices ahead of him because we were meeting up during the week.
Oh, you did that one down at the depot, didn't you?
Yeah. So that was the thing. We were in the depot, and it was like, this isn't really working. So there's always a bit of what's the word? Shift or sort of something in transit during the recording process. It's thankfully not for the last one and this one that we've just done. And my relationship with Suzanne as well, I think it's pretty obvious. The lyrics on that record was going, we're now married, and it was going fine. But there was a few bumps in the road and things, and I think, Girl was effectively about that. And I think Heartbreak was, I was feeling quite vulnerable at the time, probably quite downbeat, and I'm quite a needy person, so I'm aware of that, and I'm like, this is my way of saying, hold on to that. And also, like, hold on to that person you love is kind of a phrase of like, just kind of like realizing what you've got as well. I think I'm quite thankful for things that I have, and that song became about lots of different things. I mean, there was a verse in there that's basically about Dirty Hearts Club and how I'd felt like I was, I think the line's something about being on a throne, and then suddenly there's all these kids coming up doing other club nights, and you're old now. And it was kind of about that, and it was like going away for a wee bit and coming back to it and realizing that you've been you're challenged in some way. There's something a little bit about age as well, growing up a little bit and thinking, you're not a young man anymore. And now maybe a bit down on myself about that because I'm not exactly 70, but you start to feel a little bit out of the loop. So it's a little bit about that, and a little bit of regret about, certainly part one is about, like I said, there's a line about, I wrote down all the things, it was a bad idea, but you feel better. And I think that's what I actually did. I remember being quite unhappy and like sitting writing down a list of things that were going on and thinking, how do I process this? And then I actually felt better afterwards, and literally just things like that were going on at the time. I was living in a flat with Suzanne, both of us not really getting on very well, and working through it. And then the band was quite hard work as well, because obviously it was like, try to write songs and be social, and it's probably going out too much. I think part of my thing as well was going out too much. Lived right in the city centre, and like, our main problem was that I wasn't quite giving up the whole late night sort of lad thing. Not lad thing, but just going out all the
Going
time.
out every like weekend and
Yeah,
stuff.
and I think
It's hard. Like I guess that it would be hard to have, from the age of like 18 to say like 28. That's what you've done. You know, that's what you do with your life to then
Yeah.
try and
I think it was just
break that routine.
yeah, and there's a bit of conflict in that, and I think Suzanne's always been more grown up than me, and at that time, she wanted to. We literally lived in Rosemount, and we'd come out of South 35, and she would want to go home, and I would want to go to Drummond's, and I would go to Drummond's and then go, I'm missing absolutely nothing by going home. Why have I come here? Like, okay, my mates are great and we're having fun, but I don't need to be here. And it took me a while to realize that. So there's a bit of, so I think in the process of writing the album, it goes from like fighting with each other and not getting on to like, actually, I'm very lucky to have what I've got. And then by the end, it's kind of resolved, and it's like, you know, I'm sorry, I'm so fragile, and I need a bit of reassurance. But and that's kind of where part 3 comes in, is my kind of apology of saying, I can't really explain, you know, how I feel all the time. I'm not always going to do the right thing, but, you know, kind of saying sorry kind of thing. So I think it became this trilogy thing, but it started as just one disco track, and then it was like quite cool if we could jam the end out a bit and make that like, I like the Donna Summer thing where tracks blend on that record, tracks are blending into each other and stuff. So it felt like there was an opportunity to rock out a bit at the end, so that disco sort of part came in. We built that piece by piece. So I really like Soul Wax, and I know Scott in the band really likes Soul Wax, and that sort of synthy, rocky thing came about through that, and we had to build it quite building blocky at first to get what we had in our brains out onto the page, and then we had to replay it in, and like, because once we made it, we could see what we were trying to do. Because I remember at a certain point, Lewis in the band who plays bass at the time was like, I don't understand what we're trying to do with this. I can't hear what you're hearing, so just make it and then give me it and we'll play along. And then we made it, and we were like, that's a bit mad. It's like a 9-minute long song now.
So why you kind of broke it up, yeah.
So we broke it into 2, and then it became like a really popular song live. So we moved it to the end and made it the sort of like end of set wig out, and that kind of came about through, we got a couple of new synths, or learned how to program synths as well. So it was like, oh, suddenly we can actually do this and have a bit of fun with it. So that's quite an indulgent track, but I feel like it opened us up to, when we were playing a festival or something, we played it, everyone was just dancing to it and gets a bit of a chance to have a bit of a wig out. And then the third part came as an afterthought of, I'd written this song on my phone, and it was called Velvet Underground B-flat song for about 4 years, and I didn't finish it. I couldn't finish it. All I had was the verse about my feelings for you until about Oh My True Love. It's just this little 2-minute little thing, and I was like, that's quite a nice tag at the end of a record or something. And then I was listening to a lot of Beatles, and suddenly wrote this Hold On To My Heart, Don't Break It chorus, and I always meant to replace the lyrics because I thought, oh, that's too much like Heartbreak 1, and it's a bit repetitive.
Kind of like a reprise.
Yeah, and that's why where a band come in, and the band say, no, I think it naturally follows that, and you should just make it, because it was called Heartbreak 3 as a joke, and then it was like, no, like that you should just leave it, like it's not something a lot of people do, or it works as a sort of concept thing. So we kept it, but yeah, that's kind of how that ended up coming about, and it ended up being this big Beatlesy ending with drums and strings and everything like that. So I was really happy with that got done. But I think anyone picking up a record with Heartbreak written on 3 songs would be like, oh god, that's not going to be a party album probably. But I think it is quite an upbeat album across the board generally.
Possibly a most diverse album in some ways, in the sense that it goes through, like you say, that different range of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like your discography not condensed into one album, but the way your discography works, like you say, it starts off with a kind of party first album, and it kind of follows you through your life, and that album kind of does it in a microcosm in the same sort of way.
Well, I mean, it's nice that you got that from it, because I think it probably was quite a weird year. I don't know, I can't remember exactly what was going on, but there is, like, Modern Romance is quite downbeat, but then
what's the third song on that album as well again?
Change, I think. Change. Yeah.
I think that's one of my favourites.
Yeah, because that's a weird one, because that was like, I think if you were a record label or a manager, you'd be like, that's the single, that's a radio single, you know.
Change.
Yeah, it's like a really strong
piano,
it's a really strong pop song. But we have a habit of making really good pop songs and then kind of ignoring them or just not using them. So like, I'd written that song for a long time, couldn't get to the bottom of it. And a few people have said to me, "That's my favorite song. Why have you not pushed it?" And it's like, oh, I don't know. We preferred Girl because it was cooler. But then that's maybe part of the thing. But yeah, I do like that song. It just kind of,
Girl's a little bit groovier.
yeah, I
Bit
think
funkier,
it's a bit cooler or sort of slinkier, and I think that's always been our angle. But that's where someone else comes in and goes, no, you're completely wrong. This is your single, and sorts that out for you, I guess.
Do you show the record to a lot of people before you put it out and ask their opinions on things, and are you quite the four of you like quite a committee, quite a democratic process just between you guys?
I think it's really funny because we always say, let's not share it with too many people, keep it to ourselves, and then all of us go out and end up either having a drink with someone and going, check this out, or well, I don't. I know a couple of guys are pretty bad for it, but I'm a little shy about it. I've never really liked listening to my music in front of everyone else. Like, I find it really awkward. We were out one night and Girl came on. I was like, oh my god, this is so cringe. I'm better at it now because if it's something I'm really proud of, I'm like, yeah, great, stick it on. That's fine. I don't really care. Especially if it's instrumental. I'm like, great, I'd have to listen to my voice. But like, yeah, I would play. I always aim to, like, Suzanne will get the album as a whole. I'll be like, go and listen to this and see what you think at the end. That's my aim. But what ends up happening is naturally she hears bits and bobs along the way, either me writing it in the house or playing it to check bits out. So I'd be interested in playing it to someone start to finish and getting an honest appraisal like that. But I don't think it would affect. I wouldn't be so fussed about getting an opinion of someone because it's probably too late. It's like, oh, you should do this differently, you should change that. But it's nice when people give you good feedback, obviously. Probably send it to a few people that work in the industry and be like, what do you think the singles are, or is there anything you think is the obvious track that we should open with, or I think, but we're quite good at being quite confident with it ourselves, I think, and working it out for ourselves usually. But it is nice to get reassurance. So I feel really scared when I send it to people. It's like send it to people, and that's part of my problem. Is I'm sitting there going, oh god, what do they think of it? What if it's terrible and we've gone down a rabbit hole of awfulness and we don't know? So there's maybe a handful of people I would send it to, but not quite yet. I'm still holding on to the new one. It's finished on my phone, and I'm like, I could send it to my mate who's really critical. I've got this mate who's like super honest. And like most of your friends will be like, yeah, it sounds great. He's like, track 4 is a bit crap.
I try and be a bit like that though.
Really?
Not in a mean way, but
yeah, an honest way.
If it's one of my friends and they send me one of their songs that they've written, you don't want to bullshit them because you don't want them to put out the song. I just give my honest opinion on it.
Yeah, and I totally respect my mate for being like that.
Thankfully, most of my pals are pretty good at music.
Yeah,
so.
it's not so awkward for you then. I get it. I think it's probably better than being mollycoddled. I'm just not quite ready for him to destroy it.
I won't destroy it, but I'll say like, I really like these two bits.
Yeah.
But this is the one bit that I'm not so sure on or something.
Yeah.
But then it's difficult as well because everything's so relevant to like your perspective. Like one bit that I'm maybe not the biggest fan of, someone else I love,
Yeah, I mean, I had a guy that I worked with that I was really close to, and he's moved on now, but he buys a lot of records. So actually the last record, the only person I gave it to I gave him the test pressing firstly to check the record and say, does this work on your turntable? Because I've checked it on mine. But we had a real issue with Put Your Love in Front of Me where the record test pressing that came was broken. It wouldn't play. And it cost us a bit of money to get it fixed, and it was an issue, and it was a really long, boring story. But I was really paranoid that we would print something and it needed to be thoroughly checked. So he sent me the record back with a page of notes, and he'd said, I'll listen to it and give you some notes. And he hated Goodbye Enemies, and he was like,
hate good.
But he was like, it sounds like musical theatre, and I was like, yeah, I totally get how you could say that. But he then wrote down like caveat of like maybe just not for me, because then he loved like Bang the Drum Slowly. But then, like, I know Bang the Drum Slowly is like Suzanne's least favourite Little Kick song, which I will wind her up about because she admitted that one night. But yeah, so it's like, not everyone's going to think every track's amazing. It's fine. They can kind of deal with that. It's funny when you get different feedback. It's probably quite useful.
Yeah. Do you find you get quite a diverse range of opinions, like in terms of what people's favourite parts are on the album and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, the last one, I felt like we'd hit upon a good sentiment of things with a few of the tracks. It didn't surprise me that You and Someone Like Me was so well received, because I felt like it was a bit like Girl, and it was quite cool and it was pretty groovy. You'd expect it from us. Goodbye Enemies, I mean, I was felt pretty gleeful is the worst word to describe it, but I was like getting married in the writing of that record. I was like gearing up to a wedding. I felt pretty healthy and like been doing a lot of like running and stuff. So I felt like quite upbeat a lot of the time. And I think Goodbye Enemies distilled that and was a bit of a over the top. The idea was if the Beatles went disco, basically it was like a Beatles song but disco. It's quite McCartney, solo McCartney. It's kind of unintentionally the vibe of it. And
I think you mentioned that. I do hear that actually.
Yeah, it's like the chord changed a bit, like Ringing the Bell or whatever that song's called, which I didn't know at the time, but I heard it after. And there's a song called, God, I don't know what it's called. It's like Wings. It sounds a bit like Wings or something when he's like doing the 70s stuff, which I genuinely didn't know any of until like the last year. Now I'm like, every time I hear a song, it's McCartney, it's not the Beatles. I'm like, that's brilliant. Oh, it's Wings.
Wait, you never listened to like Wings before going?
Not really. I now know like 1985 and it's amazing.
I used to get. I think I was about, because I got into the Beatles when I was like 15.
Right. Okay.
And then it was when I was 16, got into like Band on the Run and that album,
Yeah.
Wings, and like all kind of Lennon solo stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm now fully on board with all the Beatles solo stuff, but I probably was
Apart
like
from Ringo.
Harrison. Yeah, fair enough, but Ringo. But like I'm probably was probably like more Lennon and Beatles at the making of the last record, and now I'm a bit more like I'm totally love All Things Must Pass. I'm obsessed with it, and I also also now know John Lennon stuff's better as well.
I think Harrison's first solo album, All Things Must Pass, is probably
it's the best one of the bunch. I think.
The ones released after. Do you agree? Yeah, is that your favorite?
Yeah, I would say so. It was massive for me. I think the couple of bits on the new one we've just finished, I've got a couple of things of influence from that and a couple of the arrangements, but I didn't know that I was so indebted to McCartney when I wrote the Goodbye Enemies thing. It was just like someone pointed out to me after, and then you don't always know these things when you're doing it. But I think that, you know, putting that together I was quite confident that it was going to be well received because it was so happy, and I think I was in that place where I was like, oh, of course this will be well received. Everything's great, you know. And then I was a bit gleeful, but yeah, like Don't Get Mad, Get Even and stuff, the guys really liked, whereas I thought it's like the last song I wrote for the album, and I sent it to them and they were like really into it, and I just felt like it was good, but I didn't think it was the song that they thought it was. So it's good when you've got that sounding board of a band to come back to you with things, because you don't always really know, to be honest.
Don't Get Mad, Get Even as well is one of those songs that I remember when I first heard it, I couldn't believe that someone hadn't like used that line before. Like,
yeah,
it's such a good chorus line that works so well. You mentioned earlier on as well about with Heartbreak, the synth, when that kind of came in and you started using that. How did that work its way into the band? Because I think I read before you said you never thought the band would have something like a synth in it, and then...
Yeah, I think, well, when, like, there's these things that you're surrounded with just now, they're actually, so that's two of the synths we use, they're covered in blankets because it's winter. And it's not like I'm tucking them into their beds like some weirdo. It's actually
them a hot chocolate as well.
Yeah, no, my wife thinks I'm mental. She comes in, she's like, why are they tucked up? It's like, well, that one is the Juno, that's the Juno that we've had since the band started, and it's on. I know it's over. You hear a synth come in the second track at the end. It's all over a few bits on the first record, but more as a sort of pad chordy thing. And I've always used it, but not really known how to use it
just
properly.
To kind of make it sound a little bit more whole.
Yeah, and it's got this space that comes in. It just fills a space in between guitar and drums really well. And so that's always been involved, but that's the sound of Put Your Love in Front of Me, essentially, is that synth. And then the last record is... and there's also an MS-10 synth that's not here, but it's a little black box that we use for Heartbreak that does all the mad noises. So we acquired that, and Girl and Heartbreak came from that black box synth that we acquired. I'd always wanted one. And basically, there's become a bit of a rule of thumb of like, if you get Steve a new toy, he'll probably write some new stuff. So I've bought stuff, but then written 4 or 5 things on it, because it's like being given a new toy to play with that you don't quite know all the rules, and you'll find something out of it. And so I really embraced that one for the third record. Sorry, just to finish, they're tucked up to stop dust getting in them, not because they're children, but because they're quite sensitive. That one's not so bad, the Juno one that's covered up over there, but the Jupiter, this new one we just got under the other section, is like a 1978 or something. It's really sensitive and like really expensive, and it's also really unreliable. They're just like, that's the problem. We don't use them on stage because they're like a big part of the sound, but they're just like, you can turn them on and like it'll just not work, or turn it on and it'll just go like mental. So we just got that one a year and a half ago,
So has it informed quite a lot of the new records?
So it's all over so like I basically wrote I think it's ended up being on 9 of the, I had to, not deliberately because it was expensive, but I was in my head, I was saying to Andrew in the last studio session, I said, Jupiter is on 9 tracks of the 10 now, so I think we've paid for it. And I was like, we have used it. And he was like, oh, that's fine, I'm not questioning, because the band bought that one. So, like we had a bit of money in the kitty, and I jokingly put in a WhatsApp, oh, if anyone wants to get me anything for Christmas, there's a Dutch site I follow that puts up these things. And I usually just drool at them and scroll on. I said, this Jupiter's come up for sale, pretty good nick, and it's not a bad price. And the guys were like, well, do you think you'd use it, or is it, we should get it? And so the band bought it, and then I was like, right, the band have bought this, I better write some songs. And then I did naturally write 5 or 6 tracks on it quite quickly. So it's become quite a natural thing that we've acquired these things, learned how to use them and integrate them into the sound. But that Jupiter one's a weapon. It's like, it's just crazy. And not to get into like synthesis stuff because it's pretty dull, but it just has this sound that you just can't get on a MacBook or something off of a, these things. I'm not great at technology, so I find I'll get the sound I want out of these much quicker than using a plugin or something. And that one is like, the Jupiter one is on 5 tracks, and it's pretty prominent on 2 of them, and without it they wouldn't exist. It's like, so it's been quite a good tool, and these things are good because they don't lose their value. So if Suzanne asks, we'll be selling it, but we're not going to sell it. At some point, well, we'll sell it. We'll get them now and we'll sell them, but we're not really going to sell them. So
you might need to use it again at some point.
Yeah, exactly. You never know, you might need it. So it's and actually, like, it's
an investment as well, to be fair.
Exactly, but someone said to me, it's like having a vintage car. It's like, buy them if you've got the budget that you can constantly get it fixed, or if you know how to fix it yourself, then you're grand. I don't know how to fix synths, so I need to either learn or get them serviced regularly, because they do just stop working. But when they do, they sound incredible. So there's been a big push to get that. I'm just writing more on them because I don't know. As I said, I'm not a great guitarist. I don't know enough chords, so I get stuck on chords. I'm a bit like repeating myself, I find. With synths, you turn them on, you find a patch you like, and you muck about, and you get a new sound or a new arpeggio or a new part, and you're like, oh, that could be something. And then I take that sort of knowledge of the piano to that and work it out and go away. I've got a piano in the house, so I'll go into the house and play piano and come back. I've literally seen me flip between the house and here working on stuff, and then eventually go to guitar. But I don't think any of the songs on the new record are guitar. I've not written guitar parts for any of it. Corsi's I've written all of the guitar parts. I play guitar on 2, but it's like whaley noisy stuff. And the last record, I think everything other than Let's Get Lost Together was a guitar, was a synth. So there's only one song on the last record which was written on guitar. So I've just kind of naturally moved away from it, and back towards piano stuff, I would say.
So is that really what mostly kind of informs your sound, is the instrument that you're writing on? Because with the last record, it's kind of sonically completely different to the one that came before it in terms of it's going for that kind of 80s synth.
Yeah, I think
pop type.
There was a lot of, I mean, we've all like Scott acquired a TR8 drum machine, so is it TR8? It's like a little rolling drum machine and stuff. So we're all trying to make the sound more interesting every time and do something. There's obviously got to be a common thread from every record. Because we're not a big band, but you imagine like someone who's followed the band from the start, you're like, right, there has to be a progression of some way, otherwise it's dull. If we just make Put Your Love in Front of Me Part 2 and 3, I'm sure some people would be quite into that, but it needs to change in some way.
Yeah.
And the songs that need to fit in a set together. So the thing that anchors that is the way we play, probably my voice and the arrangement of the songs and the style. But you can embellish that and change it along the way. So I feel like every album's been a bit of a step up, hopefully, each time. And like the guys have improved their setup. Somebody's got a new guitar, or someone's changed bass sound, or tried a different sound, or found a new technique. So everyone's kind of like bringing something new to the table every time. Like the Harmonies thing's now massive in the band. That's because Adam joined, and he's been in the last 2 records, this one and the last one. And I mean, Andrew, not to discredit Andrew, because he's great at harmonies with myself before. I don't know about harmony, so they're great at coming in and like making the lead vocal really sound great by just doing that backing vocal thing. We'd never had that before. So that's been a big addition to the band as well. Just bringing new things to the table and keeping it quite fresh, I think.
Right, I think we're going to need to kind of
That's okay.
wrap up a bit. But I thought we'd finish, seeing as it's, was it 14th of December today? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So 11 days after Christmas.
Yeah.
Thought we'd speak a bit about last Christmas, or
Oh God.
rather the Christmas of 2 years ago.
Yeah.
How I really like that
Mm.
that cover. When did that idea kind of come into play for you to do a cover of Last Christmas?
We what did we do? I don't really love Christmas. Like, I have to say, I like Christmas. I'm not like, don't like think I'm
I don't
Scrooge.
even know if I like Christmas, to be honest.
It's all right. I find it a bit of a stress. Like, it's reasons I won't go into.
I think
It's
it's
always
just
a bit of a
depressing, 'cause
ramshackle
it's never going to
depression.
live up to your childhood
No,
Christmas.
it's not. I mean, I'm more excited about it maybe now because we've got a child and he's not really aware of it yet, but he will get more excited than in years to come.
Yeah, in a couple,
So,
3 years, yeah.
I don't love Christmas music. I think it stems from, like, when I was like really young. I worked in a like as a waiter in one of these, like, bring a party to a party type things for Christmas job, and it's just the worst environment in the world. It's like hell with Christmas music every day. For 3 years. I did it 2 years or something. Then I just got wise to how rubbish it was. But I hate that Chris Rea song.
What, Driving Home for Christmas?
I'm mellowing in my older age to not throw things at the radio. But I can get through it now. But for a while I just had to turn it off. But the only song I've always really liked is Last Christmas. I just think it's an amazing pop song. And when you make a record, you're like, let's make a schedule of things we should be doing to keep this thing pushing along the way. And one of the things was, maybe we should do a Christmas single or something.
It's a really good idea, actually.
And it's like, yeah, you kind of look ahead and you think, right, the album's out at this time. Well, there's another single at this point. And not in a cynical way. It's just more like, what fun things can we do to push this? And I was like, well, Scott's got a pretty good recording setup. He's got like what I've got here times 1,000. He's got like actual mics and Logic and gear and stuff. We should do like a cover, or I could write a Christmas song. But then, having had a child in August that year, I was like, I'm not writing a Christmas song. I have no time. And it's actually really difficult. I think if I started now, I could get one done for next year. But I was like, I've always really liked the Wham one, and the Juno does a lot of the sounds, so we should just do our own for a bit of fun. Should do a cover.
Yeah.
So we recorded the cover pretty quickly, actually. I think we did like all the drums are like electronic and all the synths and the bass are electronic. There's no guitar. There might be an acoustic and sleigh bells, so it's quite basic. And then the guys did their harmonies, and once they did the harmony, it was like, this is actually, we should definitely stick this out as a download or something. So it was all done quite quickly, and then basically they were like, we should do a video, and I was like, oh God, this is like growing arms and legs a little bit. So our friend Scott, who does Home Alone stuff, was keen, and I was like, again, this must have been a follow-on from my gleeful post-wedding period where I was feeling quite confident, and I was like, I am prepared to put on a Christmas jumper and do some ridiculous stuff.
Kind of like Aberdeen Christmas market.
Yeah, and if you film it, we're going to make a video. I was like, just take a day off. I took a day off on the Friday, 2 weeks before Christmas, round about now. Deliberately a Friday rather than a Saturday, because there's no way I'd do it on a Saturday when it was heaving. And we had lots of really good ideas, but logistically, like, we were filming in Union Square, and I was going to be like going up and down the escalators and doing various things, and like, I don't know, just being a bit more silly with it. But I think on the day I realised the gravity of that. Plus, it's not like I could have a beer for confidence. It was like 9 a.m. So we ended up it's quite a tame one, but a bit of fun, just like being at the Christmas market on this mythical date that doesn't work out. I think the idea was actually the guys were going to turn up at the end, and I was actually waiting for the guys, and that's the whole thing, and they would turn up and we would walk off. But we just ran out of time. There was a night they were going to film. I took all the gear, like the Christmas jumper and what I'd been wearing, to another night out, and they were going to walk along the edge of the bridge and we'd meet, and Scott couldn't do it, and one of the guys couldn't do it, and it was like, let's just print it with the way it is. So it's kind of funny because it went up, and it hasn't had much. It's had like 900 views or something, which kind of suits me fine, because I don't want people in the office to get wind of it, or for example, I don't want, and my son watches it and thinks that that's a Little Kicks song. So when it comes on and elsewhere and George Michael's singing it, he says, why are they singing Daddy's song? And it's like, if I wrote that song, then I don't think we would be living in LA or something. We wouldn't be living in Newborough, because it's a massive global hit, mate. So unfortunately it's not my song. But yeah, I really like it. It's the only Christmas song I would happily listen to probably all day. Maybe the McCartney one, actually. It's quite good.
What's
Wonderful Christmas Time.
Oh yeah.
It's good.
I like the Elton John one as well. Step Into Christmas.
Oh yeah. Okay, so maybe actually there's a few good ones. You've got to be in the right mood for it.
Yeah, I came home. I felt this one. I got smacked in the face by Christmas or last night because I just got into Aberdeen, down in the flat in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
No decorations, nothing. Got home last night. Came into the family home.
Done.
Tree stuff everywhere.
All up. Yeah.
But
I'm getting there. I'm working in HMT now, so the panto is on every day. So it's kind of infectious. There's all these children coming in excited for the panto, and my son's got an advent calendar for the first, not chocolate, like it's a toy one, and that does kind of gear you into the idea of something's coming. It's the holidays and stuff. So I'm getting there, but I'm like, I wouldn't say I'm more than 48% Christmas spirit at the
ready
moment.
for Christmas.
Yeah, I'm getting there. By the end of today, I'll be 50, but I'm kind of gradually sort of like increasing. But
once you've seen Primal Scream tonight,
yeah,
that'll get you.
Hopefully, I'm not sure they'll do a Christmas song, but we could see.
Christmas cover by
Yeah.
Primal Scream. But yeah, thank you very much for this.
No worries. It's been nice to chat.
Yeah, it's lovely. But yeah, cheers.
No worries.